Hello there, Comic Clan, and welcome to Comics and Across, the greatest YouTubers you've never heard of. And we are back for another episode of Let's Talk Comics, and I am here running solo as my partner in crime was not able to join us tonight. But to make up for it, I decided to bring in an extra guest for y'all. And we are joined by Joey Esposito and Sean von Gorman, the writer and artist, the creators behind The Pedestrian. The runaway indie hit is probably the best way I could describe it.
Sure.
At least from my timeline, that's the best way to describe it, because I had never heard of this comic until a bunch of comic creators I followed all started talking about it, like it was a must pick up book. And that's what put it on our radar. So this is an absolute pleasure to finally be getting to sit down, talk to you both. Thank you both for joining me. I know it's taken us a little while to get here, a little while to set this up. We've had a few false starts and rearranging, but we've finally done it and pulled it together. And thank you just for joining me on the show today.
We did it.
It's a pleasure to be
stars for everybody.
You.
Yeah, it's an absolute pleasure to have you guys on, and welcome to the show. And yeah, so we'll pretty much just kick off talking about yourselves, and I'll leave it up to you who goes first in talking about getting into your background. But just for those that are watching, anyone who doesn't know who you are, I mean, I don't know who they would be, but just in case, you never know. You're such, mega stars. Especially Sean with the glasses on over on the side there,
John, for sure.
Certainly not my enemies. Of which there are several.
But
we do have a lot of enemies. I'm Joey. I'm the writer of The Pedestrian. What else should I say? I live in Maine, and it's awesome. I'm a writer. I've written things like Batman Urban Legend and Aquaman and Harley Quinn, but The Pedestrian is my true love, and Sean and I have also made another book together some time ago called Pawn Shop. So I've done a variety of writer on stuff, and I've written a whole bunch of things on the internet. And I'm happy to be here.
Happy to have you. Just for a little bit more on it then, so what got you into writing comics? What brought you into this? What, was the driving force? Did you grow up with it? Did you see something that caught your eye and you're like, that's something I want to do? Or what was the path to get here?
Yeah, so I've always been a comics reader. I grew up with comics. My parents read comics. Comics were always around. So it was just something that was just part of my life for as long as I can remember. When I was a kid, I used to trace, Dan Jurgens Superman issues, and for a hot minute thought I could be a comic book artist. That did not pan out. I don't have the skill or the willpower to acquire the skill, but I've always loved writing stories ever since I was a kid. And eventually I went to film school and did a lot of screenwriting and filmmaking and things like that, and eventually figured out that I could make comics just by drawing shitty comic strips and going to Kinko's and photocopying them and making mini comics. And then eventually, as I sort of started building my portfolio and connecting with other artists, started putting quote unquote real comic books together, and just sort of went from there. I've been doing this for about 15 years, and it's a learning curve, but it's been a blast, and there's nothing I would rather be doing.
Awesome. That's really cool, actually. It's a kind of, just to take that love and passion and just turn it into something like that. And I feel your pain on the art side of stuff. I don't know how, like my co-host that's usually on here with me, he's an artist, and he like sends me stuff that he's working on, and I'm like, I don't know how you do that. I can't make inks do that. They don't do that for me. I've tried many a time, so I feel your pain on that. But yeah, that's really cool though, that just kind of got that passion and trying to make your own comics and trying to get into it, and it's just eventually it paid off.
Yeah, it's just I've always been creative in different ways, and doing music, or whether it's music or writing or film or whatever it might be. So it was just kind of a natural path to be a creative person as a job. And I was lucky enough that I figured out pretty early on that comics is the best way to do that. And so far, so good. Yeah, comics is where the money is,
Oh yeah, absolutely.
obviously.
That's what every
All the
comic creator
cheddar.
we talk to says. Just rolling in it, that's what this
Oh, yeah, for sure. There's just like Scrooge McDuck in our money bank, you know?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
This is something we made at
Oh,
Baltimore. This is, guys, this can happen to you kids.
Sean has just made a whole bunch of people want to get into writing comics, and that'll be a fun learning curve for them.
They should. Everyone should try to make a comic.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And Sean, we'll jump over to you and Mr. Cash over there, Mr. Cashflow.
Sorry, hi, I'm Sean von Gorman of comics. I've been a professional comic creator for, golly, a little over 10, maybe 12 years now. I'm based in born and raised in New York City. I'm known for projects like Toe Tag Riot, Pawn Shop with Joey, that I did a number of years ago. And yeah, the Pedestrian has been a real thrill to finally unleash onto the world. It's something we've been working on for probably the better part of 5 years. The first year of that was in secret during the pandemic, where we're like, oh, we're not going to do this anymore. What's next? So we figured, oh, we'll do some kind of webtoon and just make something cool and maybe share it with people who, can't go to those shows either, and figure out how a way to monetize it later, which makes something really cool that we would like to do. And yeah, I've been I've been very, very lucky to be able to do this and make a little money. I mean, comics isn't a lot of money, but if you do it well, you might get a little money. And once in a while, you and your kids will eat.
That's always a good thing.
I think I've always, again, with Joey, we both grew up around the same time, right around, the big comic boom of the early 1990s, as my kids like to call them. Definitely a lot of DC, Superman comics, probably Death of Superman, right in that sweet spot of, oh my God, how could they do this?
Yeah.
Like probably the last time like a company lied to me and I believed it. Like never again.
That's what jaded you, is the Death of Superman?
I was like, oh, this is what comics is now. There's no more Superman. He's dead. There's no way he can come back from this. With other people's going, oh, they've done that twice before. Don't worry about it. And yeah, I cried. I think I was 12 years old. I read it with my mom, and I flipping cried real hard, like bad. I was not okay for a couple of days after that. And then that summer, a couple of these other guys came out. So we got 4 Supermen that were all fairly cool. Some were cooler than others. One was clearly not Superman.
Mm-hmm.
Off the bat, he was like, "I'm not Superman. I'm a guy you've met before. I'm in a suit. I'm just a fella in a suit." One was a clone, okay, but I was like, you know what? That Eradicator guy, he's the Superman. But nope, that was not the case.
Interesting.
Wow. You ever want to hear
that someday?
If you ever want to hear about comics influencing and affecting people right in their emotions, there we go. Like, absolutely.
Oh yeah. That was a powerful time. It was a big press, big press thing. Jay Leno wore a Death of Superman patch on the Tonight Show. This was a cultural moment. Really took off on a slow news day.
Yeah, and it really was. It really impacted everything.
The work of Martha Thomas, the work of Martha Thomas is back when she was at DC, changed comics press in general. So she was in charge of DC marketing back then. She's the one responsible for getting Jay Leno to wear that patch. And the way we get comic news stories in the news, it was never the same.
Yeah. No, absolutely. That was it though. Like the death of Superman, like that whole thing just changed comics forever. Like that was one of those things. There was some of those big moments, especially in the '90s, that just it revolutionized everything and changed the way that we did certain things. And but like you said though, we stopped believing comics after that because Death of Superman, and he was never going to come back. This is Superman's gone, and then he came back.
Like
I love that though. I think that's like part of the magic of superhero comics. When you tell a story where a hero dies, and then the story where he comes back is also very good. There's nothing better. You know, you get the emotional impact of his death and the grief and all the characters around him, but then you also get the complicated feelings when he returns. Good stuff. I love it.
Oh yeah, I mean everybody loves a good comeback story. Can't deny
you're gonna hurt me again, Superman.
it. Sean just never trusted again after that. That was it.
Honestly, what's funny is I also that same summer, like my cat died as well. Like on the first, like that the end of that summer, like the first day of school, my cat died. So that was a rough summer for
Wow.
von Gorman.
I was going to say this. You're just having a time of it that summer, really. That just totally wrecked you from it.
Explains a
Your
lot.
cat died. Your Superman died. It's like
So I can't let anyone in. Keep it at arm's length.
I'm gonna break down those walls eventually.
Joey will get there. We just need to get you two doing more comics together, and you'll get there, Joey. You'll break through it.
We're old men.
Not only have we been doing comics, we've been traveling a lot together too. We've been seeing each other in person a lot, which up until very recently was a very rare thing. Like we've been working together for years. I think maybe tops before we started working on Pedestrian, like maybe 2 in-person meetings, if I'm not mistaken.
That's true.
Oh wow!
Like doubled
I
that.
think that's true. Well, I was on the West Coast for a long time, for basically almost that whole time, except for a brief period, and then it wasn't until 2021 that I wound up back on the East Coast, and so now we're hitting a lot of shows together. And now that Pedestrian is out, we're trying to make it to all the same events and doing signings and stuff like that. So it's been great. It's like, I mean, obviously I'm very proud of the book, but also it's really fun just to have an excuse to hang out with a friend and like
Yeah.
go to new places and eat good food sometimes.
Absolutely. And speaking of that as well, you guys have been traveling about doing it recently on your socials. We've seen a lot of that. Like most recently was Baltimore Comic Con, I believe. You guys were there promoting the Pedestrian. There was a cardboard cutout, was it, of the Pedestrian himself and taking him around Baltimore, and some really cool kind of social media videos that were really quite fun to watch.
While we were filming those, I mean, getting out and getting the response that you think you're going to get in your head and then actually seeing something more than you're expecting is a little overwhelming. So Joey and I were walking around filming one of those videos, and we passed by a couple of youths. I'm guessing, late teens, early 20s. And one of them go, "Oh, hey, the Pedestrian, we love that guy." And we're both like, "What?" They're like, "Oh yeah, that's a great book." And they're like, "Well, we're those guys. That's us. We made this book." And they're like, "What?" Flipped out, and we got a picture, and they came over to the booth, but I guess they must have thought we were like working for them or something. Like, why else would we be having this giant cutout character?
You're working for them, just wandering around.
I love this idea that we have employees.
Oh yeah, well, tell them how much you love it. Wink.
We have social media managers.
Yeah, you got people. I mean, you're big money comic guys. You've got people that do all that stuff for you, right? You don't have to do any of that self promotion stuff and make your own social media posts and.
Yeah, no, it's not a full-time job. Just promoting our comic in addition to writing it and drawing it and everything else. But Baltimore was incredible. It really was, like Sean said. We've been doing shows for a long time, and usually it's fun, but it's typically can be, there's dry spells for sure, like during the weekend, but this weekend was just constant. we sold out of most of our stock. We just like got so much great feedback. I think my head grew a few sizes while we were there. It felt really nice to be validated, I guess. Like Sean said, we've been working on it for so long, and a
Yeah.
lot of that time was just between us and in secret. And so just to have it out there and have it be getting the reception we believed it could get, but weren't sure it ever would,
Yeah.
feels really nice.
I mean, how does that feel then? Like you said, taking the cardboard cutout and like, a couple of kids are walking down the street and go, oh yeah, it's not even like, oh, that's cool, you've got a superhero. There's like, no, we know that him, that's Pedestrian. Like people are like recognizing him, you're selling out of stock, you're getting major like great feedback. Because I mean, the Pedestrian is like you're creating an indie comic, which is hard enough to get attention around. It's with Magma Comics, which have been producing some good stuff, but they're still a really small publisher compared to a lot of the publishers out there, even in the indie space. How does it feel to be seeing that sort of positive feedback on this thing? Like you said, you've been working on it for years.
Yeah, it's been great working with Magma. I mean, they are a small company. They are a new company, but they're all old pros in this game. All four of them have been in IDW for years. So they're starting this company while also bringing like a the goodwill and the solid reputation from the work they've been doing for years. Where there were a lot of shops we would reach out to, and it wasn't even a pitch. We would just say, "Hey, we're doing this book with Magma Comics," and they're like, "Oh, yeah, we work with Joel for years. Anything Joel's working on, we order, or any of the guys there." It's not been a hard sell at all. And in addition to working with them, it's been beyond refreshing. A lot of times you work at or work for or work with a company that will say things and give you lots of promises of what they expect to do, and then you're not deliver on that, and then you feel really good first, and then things aren't delivered, and maybe the book doesn't perform as well. But they don't make promises that they can't keep, and their goals are realistic. And sometimes they have a cool idea, or sometimes we'll have a cool idea, and we'll kind of come at each other and figure out the best way of getting that going. Most recently, just before Baltimore, they had pitched us this idea of we had our numbers were doing okay for the print run, but they figured if they printed like 500 more, that would activate a discount on the order. So they're like, let's do an event variant for issue two, and we eventually came up with this tremendous action figure variant based on the fake toy commercial we filmed for the release of the book that we just very excited about.
That is a really cool variant. I do like that. That looks awesome. It's like I have to say it as well, just for you holding that cover up. I mean, like the artwork on it's been stunning. Like for all the covers, like I mean, like for what people are seeing up on the screen, like you guys can't see it, but I've got issue two's like main cover up, which is just absolutely stunning cover. But like all the variants, all the different stuff, they've all looked amazing. Like you guys have got some, great artists
Very
coming
lucky.
in to do like their takes on the character and different things and different styles to it, and it's been really awesome to see.
That's been
Dream come true.
probably part of the most fun thing about having a superhero is it's not really a superhero until other people put their take on it. And not one guy didn't draw Superman, one guy didn't draw Batman. People had
Yeah.
to have their take on Batman. And so we had the benefit of having an infinite amount of time where we didn't have a publisher. We would just reach out to artists that we loved and admired or were friends with and knew were fantastic, and we would send them what we had so far, and not too much, very very few notes, just bullet points of the character, but not telling them what to do, saying we want to see what these images inspire in you. And there's no rush and there's no time whenever you have a moment, so we're not getting rushed covers. One, our incentive variant by Valentine Delandro, that probably took maybe 4 years just in terms of getting the schedule right. Like we'd
Oh
reach out,
wow.
and we ran out of money. He got busy, and then eventually we were able to get it just before issue 2 went out, because he had sent us that sketch of that breakdown, that surreal, ethereal cover of this
Yeah.
mishmash of an urban setting and the pedestrian kind of gliding over it. Like that's genius, and it's something that's so outside of something I could do. And then we have Tess Fowler, Mike McCone, Brian Level, Chris Batista, Mike Allred, Dean Haspiel. I think that's everybody. But all fantastic,
Tony
creators.
Gregory.
Oh, Tony Gregory, of course. How could I forget Tony? Hey, Tony, I know you're watching.
Of course, Tony's a big fan of the show. Absolutely.
He was a Rick and Morty book out with colored by art colorist Joshua Jensen.
Oh, nice. There you go. It's all one happy family. Man. All interconnected. There you go. There you go. You heard it here. Pedestrian and Rick and Morty all exist in the same universe. Confirmed.
I mean, that could be a crossover for sure. You know how annoyed Rick would be that Pedestrian never speaks?
He would not suffer. He would not suffer him at all. But yeah, like that must have been a kind of joy for like the artist to be able to basically be given a superhero and really given no notes on it and kind of like do your own thing and see what you think. Like here's inspiring images of the comic, of the character, do your take on it. And not only that, but like, oh yeah, we don't actually have a deadline for it. That's, I mean, especially in the comic book industry, that's an unheard of thing. It's like having art needing to be done and not having a deadline on it is like, that doesn't happen ever. So
that's the perk of like having a really weird book that no one wants to publish, is you're just like, well, it's going to happen eventually, but who knows when? So take your time. But I think it worked in our favor, and getting those covers back from artists that I have loved and admired for so long, just was unreal. Like seeing your creation brought to life by an artist that you love. I'm not sure there's a better feeling than that.
Yeah.
It's just, it makes it feel more real in a way that not that us working on the book, it wasn't real, but seeing someone interpret it just like solidifies it,
No, absolutely. So we've kind of hinted at like the creation of the Pedestrian a little bit, and we've kind of like, you talked about how you had to shop it around a bit. Nobody was picking it up for some time. But let's go all the way back, because you kind of briefly mentioned like 2020 was like the origin of this creation. How did the idea of the Pedestrian come about in the first place?
The initial bit of it was I had come up with this character design of a fella sort of inspired by the white blinking man in a "Don't Walk" sign, and thinking that would be really funny to have that as a costumed hero with no powers. What if you have the Flash, who doesn't run fast? He's ready for action. He's going to run extremely well for long distances, and he'll get to you eventually. And I didn't have much more than that rough idea, and a name of the Pedestrian. I was like, okay, he just walks around in real time. I didn't have much more than that, and I remembered how great Joey was at building these rich characters from when we were working on Pawn Shop. I thought it'd be really cool to maybe do something similar to what we did in Pawn Shop for those who are listening who haven't read it, which was probably all or most of you. It's about a day in the life in New York City from 4 different perspectives, and each chapter is a different perspective of the same day from a different character. And we always loved the idea of playing with timelines like that, seeing things from different angles. So I showed this to Joey. He loved it. He hopped on immediately, had ideas immediately, and so we started building sort of this world that this fella exists in. And then it kind of touched on a few things that Joey was reminded of his upbringing.
Yeah, so I grew up in a small city, and it was this town where there was a big corporation, GE, who was a major employer, And when I was a kid, they kind of pulled their plastics headquarters out of the town and laid off, you know, 13,000 people or whatever it was, and just really devastated the town. And this is after, the main street had kind of crumbled because a mall opened up nearby. It was just a real town on its backslide kind of thing. But there was a guy who would run everywhere. You would see him running to get his grocery, like I say running, but like slowly jogging, just all the time. I have no idea what his name was. I don't know anyone who knows him, but he was a fixture in the community. And you'd be driving along, like, oh, there's the running guy, you know. And I at this point I feel bad that I don't know what his name was, but and so seeing Sean's design brought that to mind instantly. And then I started thinking about growing up in this town where, all the adults around you are like, there's nothing here for you. You need to get out. There's no opportunities here for you. There's no jobs, whatever. And how that impacts, as a kid or a teen, how that impacts your relationship to your hometown and that community where you don't necessarily feel like you should be putting a whole lot of effort into building a community there because you know that you're going to leave as soon as you're 18 anyway, which I did, you know. Um, and so a lot of the stuff with Summer City and the Pedestrian and the characters who inhabit it are really influenced by where I grew up and the kind of people who live there. And I should also say it's a lovely place. Going back as an adult, it's much different, than when you're like in high school and there's just nothing to do.
Yeah.
But as an adult, there's a lot of the surrounding areas. There's a lot of the great art scene. There's lots of cool museums. It's beautiful. Um, it's a very real vortex that you're sucked into when you're that age, where you just desperately want to get out and you don't know how to do it.
Yeah.
And I think that the pedestrian, the character, sort of offers a lot of these characters their first sort of glimpse at something beyond their immediate life. Like there's more to be offered here than what they may have thought.
No, absolutely. And I think the thing, even just that whole setup of that kind of like small town and the idea of like the vortex is just you end up getting trapped there. I think that's very much something that a lot of people can relate to. It's
Yeah,
like
for sure.
I mean, like I moved here to the US about 10 years ago, and one of the things that I always found really intriguing was how vast this country was, yet how many people you talk to like were born and live and grow up and spend their lives in the same place, and it just this vast as of people who have never even gone outside of their state. And it's like
Yeah,
people live in these small communities, and a lot of people stay in these small communities, and but also like to see like the younger people kind of like, oh, I'm going to leave this place and go and do it. And how many movies have you seen with that, like the person then has to go back home? It's like, because they don't make it elsewhere and go back to the small town. And it's like it's something a lot of people can relate to. So yeah, like even
yeah,
because it just feels like a small little community in Summer City. And a lot of the characters talk about that feeling, like there's just this feeling of this vortex. But when you actually look at the city, you don't see anything that resembles that, really. It seems like just a little town. So I think
right. Well, I
that's
think a lot of it
captured
too
very
is
much.
I think a lot of it can also be internal because when I go back to visit my folks or my sisters or friends who still live there, there's plenty of cool stuff around. But I think if you're ambitious or a creative person and you don't immediately see opportunities there, you sort of are chomping at the bit to get out.
Yeah.
And I think when you are told that there's no opportunities there, you don't bother to look. So I feel like had I been conditioned otherwise as a kid or a teenager, maybe I would have actually like kind of explored a little bit more rather than like I'm just gonna hang out with my friends and play video games until I can get the hell out of here.
Yeah.
So I think part of the goal with the book too, and I should also say I am one of those people who moved to LA and then I ended up moving back home for like 2 years. And it was a pretty dark time. That was about when Sean and I were wrapping up on Pawn Shop. We were both having a rough go of it at the time. Um, so I imagine some of that feeling also is kind of creeping into the book here.
Hmm.
But it all worked out, and I met my wife during that time, and now we have the pedestrian. So it's I don't want to be one of those everything happens for a reason people, but I think like your experiences are cumulative, and eventually you can turn them into something great.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a really good way of putting it. It's like, it's not necessarily the whole everything happens for a reason, but like, it ended up putting you in a place where you got to have a benefit in it. Like you said, you put you in a place where you got to meet your wife where you necessarily wouldn't have met her before, and you got to move on
Right.
to do other work that you wanted to do, such as this. And I think that's an important thing to point out as well, because like we see that place with the characters in the book that some of them come back to the town and just are now stuck in this vortex. And I think that can happen to people. They get stuck in that vortex of like coming back to the town feeling like a failure because they left and didn't make it, and but they stay there. They kind of like just stop dead, and they don't keep going forward and keep moving into something new. Okay, what's the next chapter? And I think that's the important thing that I feel like I'm getting from you there is like that, that was just the ending of that chapter for you. And it was the start of another chapter,
Yeah.
which led in a different way.
I think even if you stay where you grew up or whatever, as long as you are fulfilled and you're not staying in this place of like, oh, I'm so miserable. Why am I still here? Like, I think if you can be happy there, then do that. But for Randy, for example, like she's a character who was valedictorian and was like gonna move on to all these great things. And it didn't quite pan out that way. And now she's back, and I think her character is someone who's very much in her head about sort of like what that means and how that reflects on her. When really, if she was 10 years older, I'm not sure that she would necessarily have that point of view.
Yeah.
But because she's young and just feels like a failure, like it weighs a lot heavier at that age.
No, absolutely. And I think that's it. It's like all the characters bring a really great perspective to it. But yeah, Randy definitely has that vibe to her. But it's going to be really interesting to see where her story goes, though, where all the stories go for these characters as it kind of moves forward. I kind of want to delve a little bit into the story itself now. So we're 2 issues in, so we're going to talk a little bit about the first 2 issues at the very least. If you guys have not checked out this book at this point and don't want spoilers, then just pause, go run to your local comic shop, grab it, come back. We're good to go. Sorted. Or you can also check out our reviews, which I would appreciate you doing anyway. Go and I'll put a little link up in the corner. Go and check those out as well. But
you've been warned.
You have been warned. We're going to jump into some spoilers for this, and I think I heard you talking to someone, like I saw an interview from another comic like YouTuber that I followed from Baltimore, and one of the interesting things that I kind of descriptions of the book, or at least of issue 1, is this very much feels like an interesting mixture of superhero meets slice of life.
Absolutely.
And that really stuck with me because the whole first issue especially, there's not much super heroics. There's some heroic moments where the pedestrian comes in, where he helps people, he saves people, absolutely. But there's also these moments of just slice of life as we're getting to meet these characters around Summer City and we're getting to be introduced to them. Was that an intentional thing to do to try and make it a bit more slice of life and a bit more kind of to create that feeling of it? And is that something that you guys are trying to keep going forward? Because in issue 2, it kind of starts to obviously change a little bit, and I'll get to that in a moment. But
sure. Yeah, we definitely wanted to take time and focus on each of the characters. The initial version of this was, an episodic web series. So each of these shorts that we were working on was sort of inspired by, the old Marvel comics, like chapter 1, 2, 3. You have 4 chapters for a full issue, for a full feature-length issue.
mm-hmm.
And we figured we have other projects. We're not working on this full time at the time, but we could, focus on doing 5, 6 pages at a time and let these stories build on each other. And also love, in the first act of a superhero story or superhero movie where we don't, the more we see of the character, the less the less spectacular it is. So it's like Jaws. We see the guy a little bit, we see him a little bit here, we see him a little bit here. We get a good glimpse of him on the cover because he's a weirdo. He's doesn't fit in with our society.
Yeah.
He is a mystery and an enigma. And if this were any other guy, you see someone in a Halloween costume and it's not Halloween, and you make eye contact with that person, you're gonna get, oh, don't worry, I'm not crazy. I'm going to a party or I'm doing a thing. I'm gonna play. He's not reassuring you. He's just standing there silently and doing his thing. And he's not a man of words. He's a man of actions.
Hmm.
So all you have to really judge this person is what he's doing. And you can kind of pin your hopes and dreams on this guy because you don't really know what his motivation is at this point.
No, absolutely. Because in the first issue as well, it's so interesting just to see him interacting with people because what he does varies so wildly. Like our first introduction to him, Kira's walking home from her job. She gets attacked at night. The pedestrian appears, chases the guy off, and we get our first really weird moment of him where like the don't walk sign goes in the crosswalk and he stops dead, stops chasing the guy, which is like bizarre in and of itself. But like next time we see him, I can't remember if it's the next time in the issue, but we see him like with Randy, like he's literally just helping her back into a parking space. That's his good deed in that moment. And then like, at the end of the issue, we see him saving Sid and James, and we see him going to basically leading the police to James Tucker, or like getting there and then leaving just before the police arrive. And like, it's such varying variety of things that he does that are all, it makes me almost think of like that, it's almost the turning on its head when people say, like all sin is the same sort of thing. We were talking about the religious thing. All sins are the same, not one's worse than another. It's almost the same thing to him in the sense, but flipped, of like all good deeds. It doesn't matter what it is. It's a good deed. I'm going to go and I'm going to accomplish a good deed. This person needs help in this way. I'm going to do it. And it's like, that's almost the vibe I get from him, of like he just walks in, does whatever needs to be done, and then just speed walks away and into the night again.
Yeah, I think that's a solid read. He's doing small kindnesses or small deeds, always abiding by the rules and the laws. But I think thematically, it's just kind of like, what if all of our small good deeds were cumulative, and like, does that impact anything in the world around us? Obviously, things generally speaking are often pretty bleak, and
Mm-hmm.
things in Summer City can seem pretty bleak for a lot of these characters. But if there's one guy going around just doing small kindnesses, can that be spread as infection is a negative word, but can that inspire others to do something similar? How does that change the mindset of, oh, this guy's doing this thing, I could do that.
Yeah.
I don't want to put words in the pedestrian's mouth, but like, maybe that's part of his motivation. We'll have to see.
Yeah. Just paying it forward, of like doing a good deed so that someone else will do a good deed. And yeah, I think
I
that's awesome.
to work with a guy at a hotel years ago, and he's this big, tall fella, very, 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 very conservative, maybe a little on the nerdy side. Had glasses. Um, whenever we would go out for like an after work social adult beverage, he would come, and he'd be the guy sitting at the end of the bar and just going, I don't drink. It's okay if you drink, but I'm not going to drink, because he wanted us to see that he's leading by example in this pub, that I'm not going to drink so that others can see me not drinking, and maybe my example will lead on. And I always thought that was so endearing because it was, seemingly not effective at all. It didn't stop any of us from not getting multiple drinks. But I do think about that a lot, and I think something like that maybe seeped into the stew of this. Of I'm doing this. This is what I'm going to do. I hope this helps you, but I'm still going to do this. I don't care if you think if I look weird. Maybe you're talking about me behind my back. And I think I do like to think that good deeds are cumulative. That those can spread. I mean, let's talk about social media for a moment.
Yeah.
It's very difficult to get positive things to go viral and track. It is very easy for negative things to go viral immediately.
Absolutely.
Like a negative hot take, boom, we're at war now. We're so polarized these days that you say the wrong 2 or 3 words, that person is no longer your friend forever.
Yeah.
And I think there is something to be said that it's not impossible for a positive deed to spread onto others. It's just a lot harder to keep that going. And I think that's more heroic than spreading negativity. You have a bad day, scream into someone's face. What are they going to do with that information? Where's that going to go? They're going to take it out on another person? They're going to take it out on their kid? They're going to kick a cat? Who knows?
Yeah.
Right. But alternatively, you see someone having a bad day and you do just to help them parallel park, or you do some small gesture. That's I've experienced that, and it just turns your mood around, turns your entire day around. And I think that, Sean, the fellow that you were talking about, I think maybe he did not inspire you to not drink that night, but I think clearly, like, him standing by his convictions or his ethics or whatever it might be rubbed off on you, and sort of like implanted in your brain. And I think that not only made it into the book, but I think in life you see people living their lives by certain principles, and I think that is inspiring. And I think you synthesize it in a way that eventually, maybe it hopefully becomes part of how you live your life also,
And make us very
and make us very rich.
Of course, absolutely.
If only.
monetizes positivity.
That's a power of positivity. But I think that's the interesting thing with the Pedestrian is actually kind of like the guy at the bar that you were talking about. Like, he sat there and he was very prominent. This is his conviction. He's going to not drink and he's going to make sure that, that he's not drinking. But it never really influenced anyone to not do it. And kind of like you said, Joey, but here we are talking about this guy at the bar who never drank. He's being talked about,
Also, I think importantly, critically, also not judging you for doing it.
Yeah, not judging you for doing it. But I think that's very much what we actually see in the Pedestrian.
Sure. There was lots of judgment for sure.
Okay, well, if this is the Pedestrian doing that, he would not be judged.
If it was the Pedestrian, he definitely wouldn't. He's
very large hands, and it was a very long figure wagging. I'm not doing this.
But I think that's definitely came through in the Pedestrian, because you see it, especially as we come into issue 2. At that point, he's had an effect on multiple people's lives in just the one evening, essentially, or the first couple of days. And their lives don't really change, at least not initially. You don't see, Kira doesn't have a big amazing moment after her life saved. Detective Sherwood's looking for the guy, but it's not really changed her life or anything. Sid and James are still just little kids, It's they've not been changed and altered in this way, except the fact of they are now aware of this guy and aware that he's there, and it changes and they're thinking about it. We see at the start of issue 2, Sid and James are drawing, and one of them's drawing the Pedestrian, which then ignites the conversation with Kira, and it's so although he's not had that influence yet, like you said, that power of positivity, doing a good deed, hoping to influence others, is it does start in the small things, hoping that it's going to become more and it's going to snowball into something that allows them to be a change for good. And I think that in itself is a very positive message of The pedestrian's like, he's not asking for anything. He doesn't talk to them. He doesn't interact. He's like, I'm not asking you to change who you are. I'm just doing good things. And if that inspires you, fantastic. But I'm going to do the good thing anyway. And that's a really positive message that you don't often get to be something that's that positive and subtle at the same time.
Thank you. That's one of the best compliments I've ever gotten.
Yeah. But I think honestly, I think it's an amazing thing, because like whenever someone tries to do good stuff, it usually is something that's rammed down your throat. Kind of like you said, the guy at the bar, the finger wagging. Like, I'm not going to drink and I'm going to sit here and judge because I want you to know what you're doing is wrong. And I'm like, when has that ever changed someone's life or opinion or anything? But like
exactly.
But like the subtleness of the way the pedestrian does it is the way I think is like, it's just, I'm going to do a good deed. And I'm like, it's not about the praise. He's not looking for the fame and the fortune. He's not looking for the recognition. In fact, there's people literally looking for him and can't find him in the book, mentioning Detective Sherwood, But yet he's still having an influence for the positive. And I'm like, that's a great message. It really is.
Thank you.
One of the things we had talked about in length is how in the making of this is how big fans we are of Superman. How maybe this year will be different, maybe next year will be different, but a lot of times, with the exception of the Arrowverse, I would argue that the perception of Superman and the depiction of Superman has been a bit off because we're forgetting his most important quality. It's not any of his powers. It's that he was someone who was raised by good parents, who was sent out into the world and is trying to do the right thing always.
Yeah.
And that's something we like to think that the pedestrian is doing, but with a lot of those trappings stripped away. Like, he doesn't fly, he doesn't have really cool powers. He's just a guy. He's Superman without the powers, just trying to, puts on a costume, goes out every night, trying to change the world a little bit.
Mm-hmm. No, absolutely, and I think I love you even saying that about like Superman, because that's always one of my things for it. Is what came to my mind there was just the fact of when it comes to secret identities, it's always interesting that Batman is Bruce Wayne's true identity. He is Batman, and he pretends to be Bruce Wayne. That's the real mask. But when it comes to Superman, even though Superman is Kal-El, is this alien from another planet, his true identity is Clark Kent. His true identity is the person, is the good man, is like, yeah, there's all that Kryptonian stuff, but that is who he is as a person. And like that raising that he got from his parents on Earth was what made him him and made him be a good man. And so often, like you said, the interpretations we get, a lot of them have missed the mark because they don't focus on that. It's always like, the fish out of water, or like this, godlike being looking down. Like, the whole point is that he's a good man in the body of a godlike being. Hey there, Comic Clan. Did you know that Comics in the Cross are also on Patreon as well? For as little as just $2 a month, you can get access to all of our content from YouTube early before it drops here. That includes reviews for our comic books, tabletop gaming and video game channels, as well as the Indie Comic Book Club and our Let's Talk Comic interview show. Also, there is exclusive content available just to our Patreon subscribers. That includes watch-alongs, interviews, and a lot of behind-the-scenes information and goings-on in Comics in the Cross. If this sounds like something you'd be interested in checking out, then please go and check out the link for patreon.com/comicsinthecross. And if you do choose to support us and partner with us, then we are super grateful for that. And thank you so much for your kind and generous support. But for now, that's all from me. Let's head on back into your video.
Both my kids are on the spectrum, and I'd love to talk about my relationship with autism and maybe how this has kind of been coded maybe not initially in the Pedestrian, but we have had some people ask about it and bring it up. But there's definitely people who have been picked up on the coding of maybe Pedestrian's on the spectrum. Maybe this is an autistic superhero. We
I'll
had some
be
comments.
honest, I never read it in that take before, but I could absolutely see it now that you say it. I'm like, yeah, there's definitely stuff I could see that people could read somewhere in the spectrum on that. Absolutely.
Doesn't make eye contact. Very socially awkward, but benefits from having structure and tasks.
I'm sorry, I was
Definitely.
laughing thinking he's just not talking to people. He just goes up, does a task, and just walks away. And I'm like, yeah, that's about right. That's
There's a comment on the video that Dan Exclaims posted a couple weeks ago of what did the guy write? He wrote, "Bro weaponizes autism." That really hit me,
that is awesome. I love it.
which is something that like we is intentional of working in there, but it's not something we want as the headline of the story because we don't want to detract from anyone who's on the spectrum who are very rich and full people living in the world. This is just a small thing about them that we think maybe this is an underserved community that we don't want to be like, hey, here's your autistic superhero. No,
Yeah.
this is a superhero who we don't know a lot about him, but he's definitely got the signs of maybe someone who's on the spectrum.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that's a great thing is to be able to say that. I think it's great to create something like that, and then he wasn't created in that vein of being someone that was on the spectrum, but like knowing that people can look at it and go, "Oh yeah, I see it." I'm like, fantastic. If you get that out of the story and you read into it, that's brilliant, But at the same time, you don't have to plaster it everywhere and go, "Hey, autistic superhero, you should check this out," because that's not the point of it. It's like and even if he is autistic, then that means the fact of not making that a forefront thing of definitely claiming him autistic is like, well, that's something he has. It isn't necessarily who he is. Like, yeah, he's got autism. All that means is he sees the world in a different way. That isn't his whole personality.
Right.
It influences it, but it doesn't define him completely, which is a great thing.
And we still know, 3 issues in, the reader still knows very little about him. What we know a great deal about him, but we definitely get a little bit of a taste of maybe something behind the curtain in maybe an unexpected way. Like you had mentioned earlier, how each issue seems to be kind of its own thing, and that was definitely intentional. Of this first issue was, let's set up this world, let's introduce this character, and let's fall in love with this guy, and maybe let's fall in love with maybe the people in the town. And then issue 2, we just kind of smash that fishbowl in maybe an unsettling David Lynchian way of like, this world that we're living in is not what it seems, and maybe we're not okay. So I love how the first issue is, these are pretty low stakes, and then issue 2 is like, have the stakes never been higher?
Yeah, I definitely want to transition to that because in issue 1 we get like no real hints of anything that's to come of the other side. The only thing we get in issue 1, I believe, is we see one of the guys in the all black with the red handprint on the face standing in the building or at the entranceway to one of the buildings. Like that's it. We see him and then we move on. And I'll be honest, like I said it in my review as well, like immediately I thought, okay, so this is going to be like rival clans. Like I was like, rival clans of like street signs, or like it's going to be like I mentioned like the Turtles versus the Foot Clan, or Daredevil versus the Hand. It's going to be in that sort of vein. I literally, probably because he was dressed in all black and had an actual hand on him, that is probably why my mind went there. I'm not going to lie.
Sure.
But I was like, that makes sense. Like, yeah, because there's good versus evil. We're going to jump into that. Okay. Nope. It went so much deeper than I was expecting in issue 2. Because next time we see one of those guys, he is putting his hand on James Tucker, who's been arrested's face, and we then see James Tucker with a a kind of red hand on his face that appears and disappears, and he has a friend following him. Some sort of red entity or being or something on his shoulder. And I'm like, what in the hell is happening?
We see them a little earlier if you look carefully. We put in tons and tons of details for the benefit of rereads, but even Joey didn't catch this one until maybe before he went to print. Like when Sophie dropped off the
Yeah.
print, there's another one outside.
Yeah,
So maybe
I totally missed that one. Yeah.
so yeah, definitely. There's lots of nuggets in there that are really going to pay off for rereads and coming back to it, looking at it from a different light. Even the first issue, if you look carefully on the cover, you see the cover there. If you look really closely into some of the windows, we got maybe some people in the windows that we maybe didn't notice on the first time. Like a few, people with the red hands. That it's out, but these fells are known as the clutch.
The
So it's the
clutch. Okay.
hand closed.
That makes sense. Okay, I'm glad I've got a name to call them now, because I was hesitant to even call the Pedestrian, because in the first 2 issues he isn't even referred to as the Pedestrian. So I was just kind of like, I don't want to say the Pedestrian in case that's not going to be his name. I'm just going to stick with our hero. And I kind of liked that because it was more of a classic-y sort of sound to it. And then it was like he got referred.
I know that
he gets referred to it later, and it's like, okay.
Conventional superhero storytelling is like, you got to always name your characters. You got to make sure everyone knows who everyone is. And we just sort of as with a lot of things in this book, we just kind of didn't do that.
No, it's like
that's on purpose. I think it goes to the subtlety thing that you were talking about, and also we talk, like Sean just mentioned, we talk a lot about but on a reread, this would be cool. So I don't know if that's putting the cart before the horse.
I think it's a cool thing of just.
Benefit of the doubt,
I think it's a cool thing, especially when it comes to him as a Pedestrian, because if literally for the first 2 issues, we know nothing about this guy, and technically we don't even know his name for the first 2 issues. And I think with a character like him, it actually helps.
Sure, and we still don't know his of his of his legal name.
Yeah,
say Pedestrian on his ID.
No, yeah, it's
but I think something we talk about a lot is Twin Peaks. That's a huge influence on me, on us, on this book in particular. And I love the idea, for Lynch in general, just kind of lets the audience digest and deliberate however they choose, or take what they want from it, or read what they want into it. I think we take the same approach in a lot of ways, in that I don't think that we're interested necessarily in explaining every detail as much as we are presenting the details and connecting them in a way that makes sense for the story, but not in a way that's like exposition, and letting readers kind of put pieces together and theorize and wonder what's going on. And I think hopefully, as long as it's intriguing, it'll keep you coming back issue to issue. And that's the hope. We could, listen, if it goes wrong, it's my fault. But
no, I appreciate that, a story that can make you think and doesn't just give you everything up front. I'm a fan of that, that Twin Peaks sort of mentality of stuff is presented to you. That I love good mystery shows and good mystery stories. I love getting to theorize and plan and think, oh, what if this happened? Could this be the story? Could that be, what does this mean? What does that mean? How does that play into it? I love that idea, and that almost a community that creates from that, because you go and find other people, I need to talk to someone about this. What did you think of this? And
yeah,
I'm always a fan of that. Once you get... No, on you go, sorry.
I was just going to say, I think it's also trusting the reader to want to be along for the ride, and not feeling like you have to sell them on your idea, or you have to sell them on the story or the characters. It's just I think part of it is confidence in ourselves as creators, but also confidence that the reader wants to be taken on this journey and wants to get weird and wants to think about these things, and wonder what the hell is going on. And yeah, I don't know. I like the idea of trusting the reader to pick up what you're putting down.
Yeah.
And to your point of the dialogue, I mean, there are people, it's out now, it's out in the world. It's people are finding it on shop shelves and picking it up and going, "What is this?" And then picking it up and going, "This is so dumb." And then they flip through it and they're like, "Oh wow, this is not what I was expecting."
Mhm.
And they're left a little change that a lot of people, we're hearing a lot of people going, "Yeah, I found, I contacted another friend of mine. I gave my copy of the book. It's like, just read this. Like, don't even talk. I need to talk to somebody about this. Just take this book and read this, and we'll talk about it." And we've had multiple people coming up of like, "Yeah, a friend just threw the book at me and was like, you got to read this," and both are converted into pedestrian readers.
Yeah.
That's like the greatest compliment I can imagine. It's like
I mean,
you're
that
so
was
into something that you have to tell somebody else about it. I
I
can't
mean, that was
imagine a
literally how I
greater
found out about it,
compliment.
was people talking about it, and it's like I've not heard of this. Like, I had never heard of Magma Comics at the time. I had not heard of the Pedestrian. I was like, what in the world is this book, the Pedestrian, that people are talking about? I'm like, okay, I need to go and check this out and see if I can, see what it's all about. And I started reading it, and I'm like, okay, yeah, I'm intrigued now. You've got my attention. You've caught me in for this. And then read issue 2, and it was like, what the hell is going on? I need to keep reading to find out what happens. This is insane. Where is this going? And I'm like, and yeah, I'm a
Great
reader now.
question.
I'm into the Pedestrian now. I'm a reader of it now because I'm like, I need to know what happens. It's like, I need to find out what the payoff is at the end of it. I do. You've managed to
Well, thank
get
you.
me into it.
I hope we don't disappoint.
I highly doubt it. And for that big left turn that happens in the second issue, I want to talk about it again. Spoilers for the second issue. Please, if you've not read it, go read it. Come back, check out the rest of the interview after you've checked it out. I highly recommend it because when you turn to that page, you are not expecting it. I guarantee you.
There's no turning back now.
Because so far at this point, all we have seen is the Pedestrian and the members of the Clutch. And they did something to James Tucker. And as I mentioned, he gets a entity, being, devil, demon, whatever the hell.
I think entity is a good term for it.
I was like, what do we even call him? Of like the Clutch's hand symbol is literally his head, and he is inciting him like a devil on his shoulder to do violence. That he's hungry for violence.
Yeah.
And we're like, okay, so there's something deeper going on with the Clutch. And then he actually confronts the Pedestrian. We see the entity touching the Pedestrian, and the Pedestrian goes into this cosmos scene with all these celestial beings with traffic light heads and the stop, don't walk hand head. And I turned to that page and I was like, what in the hell is going on? What have I just turned over to? Like, this is what is happening. And
Mission accomplished.
you have no idea how much I have tried to process that in my head since I read it. And then having to write a script for the review, record the review, get the image panels for it. So I'm looking at it multiple times. And every time I'm looking at it, I'm getting different theories. It's like, are these just celestial beings that exist? Are not going to play a factor? Are they empowering them? Is this some like heaven and hell-esque level fight? And I'm like, I literally got to the point yesterday where I was like, it's in his head. This isn't real. Like, the entity's done something to him. He's seeing it all in his head. It's not real.
All a dream.
And I'm like, I don't know. Like, I can't tell you the amount of theories I came to because it was so out of left field. I wasn't expecting it. And I'm like, but yet it didn't hinder the story. It just shifted the level of it to like,
thank you,
gang warfare to celestial warfare. And I'm like, and then, and no spoilers for issue 3, because Joey, thank you so much. You sent me issue 3 and I got to read that way ahead of schedule. And I'm like, yeah, it keeps ramping up. It keeps ramping up even beyond this. And I'm like, I don't know where this story is going. I'm hooked into this because I need to know what happens, and I still don't know. There's just more questions.
So not to give a definitive answer on any of that, I will say that we talk about following the rules. Rules are important in this world.
Mhm.
You know, even with creatures that are beyond us, rules are still important. What we see at Pizza Sun is someone breaking the rules of maybe a game that's being played or a contest that's being played out in our realm, and kind of what happens when the rules are broken.
Mm. That's going to be interesting. Because yeah, I was waiting for that to come back in because I'd mentioned it as well. Like in issue 1, we see that when he first chases the pedestrian chases James away from Kira when he goes to attack her, and he stops at the light, and you kind of mentioned that, and I'm like, okay, so rules are definitely a thing, and I'm like, I am so intrigued with that because that I was not expecting it. Like, I guess that's the thing. I was like, it's so weird because I want to keep asking questions, but I don't have information to ask questions. And I know you guys aren't going to tell me, even if I did ask the questions, because why would you? You need people to go buy the books. You're not going to give it away for free on a YouTube podcast. So it's like, but I'm like,
also wouldn't be as satisfying if it was us just mumbling through like some answer and seeing it play out.
no,
That's like reading a
absolutely.
Wikipedia page of Twin
Yeah.
Peaks or whatever.
No,
There's
exactly. You want to see it play out. Absolutely.
there's also like what our interpretations are. Sometimes my interpretation is a little different from what Joey's interpretation is of
Mm-hmm.
what is going to the script. And sometimes, especially in the first version of it, I would just take a detour once in a while because we were doing a vertical scroll comic, so I would do these flourishes where, funny enough, the initial version was a much longer vertical scrolling comic because we have lots of vignettes where we're seeing him walk around in real time. Because I thought that would be so funny to spend time on that you can never do in a print book because who would pay for that? Nobody.
Yeah.
But in a digital canvas, you can just keep going. And I think that initial moment was I had the idea and I mentioned it to Joey, like, what if they're in the pizza shop and like something happens and we just pull the curtain back. We just I kind of threw this visual of what I had in my head, and Joey's only note was, "Let's not see their penises," which I think was a good note.
I was going to say, if that's the
Oh,
only
no.
note you've got, that's not bad. That's not bad if that's the only one.
Oh no.
Like this, just let's not show their junk and we're good. Let's just
There,
keep
there's a
that.
version. There's a version in my computer where you see their junk, and that was in an early version of this.
You have at least something to the imagination. You know what I mean?
Oh, that is fantastic. I love that. That's the only note.
But I think what I love about playing with this idea that there's like there's other stuff going on that our characters are not concerned with. Our characters are concerned with making rent and staying sober and hanging out and watching their favorite TV show. And I think it's an interesting angle to put that next to this other thing that's going on. This I know we don't know what it is yet, but there's clearly a larger story at play, and
Mhm.
yet our characters are still just like in such mundane day to day life, and seeing how or if these events change that for them, or if there's just nothing, like, are they even able to like operate on that kind of a level? You know what I mean? And I think that comes back into, we were talking about Superman earlier, and something I've always loved, especially about the '90s era of Superman, is the supporting cast was great.
Mhm.
But like thinking about this book, it's almost like, what if the supporting cast of any usual kind of traditional superhero book, they were the main characters, and the superhero character was kind of incidental. Sean's leaving. He's heard me say this too many times. Um, but yeah, so I like the idea of normal people potentially having to comprehend something that is beyond human comprehension,
Hmm.
and we'll see how that plays out, or if it plays out in volume one.
No, absolutely. And speaking of that, actually, you mentioning side characters and kind of people getting to understand us. In issue one, we see like a whole bunch of people who are living their lives who are first time exposure to the Pedestrian. In issue two, we meet someone who's pulled the curtain back a little bit further than the rest. And it's so funny because she becomes such a major part when you read issue two, and when you finish issue one on its own, you don't even think she's one of the characters we're following. She just happens to be there. And it's Sophie Smith, the crossing walk guard, who we see at the very end of issue one, who's there when Sid and James are pulled out of the way of the drunk driving teacher by the Pedestrian and by her, and you don't think about it much at the time. She just happened to be there. And then we find out actually she's one of our main narrators and one of our main characters for issue two, and plays a much bigger part than we realised. Because she actually knows the Pedestrian. The apartment we see him sitting in the first issue eating pizza is her apartment.
Mm-hmm.
And her inner monologue is so intriguing. Because she talks about, like we were talking with the Pedestrian, we mentioned it earlier about doing the little things, like doing little things and stepping in and just doing the little good deeds and how it affects people. That's literally her monologue. Is that there's evil in the world. And it's not just like these big, unstoppable, uncontrollable evils, it's these little things. And we try to do what we can to help and do the right thing. And she says, like, but people like me, that's all I can do. It's just the small things. But there's a bigger evil out there, and someone needs to step up to it. And heavily hinting at, like, the Pedestrian might be the person to do that. And just that monologue in itself, or that internal kind of running for a couple of pages, gets your gears turning, because it's like, oh, hold on a minute, this dude that was running around just doing good deeds, little things here and there, like, is he meant for something more? To use an old cliched phrase, but like, has he got a greater purpose that he's about to fulfill? And I'm like, she becomes such an interesting character, She becomes such an intriguing character from having not been a character essentially in the first one, and you realise, actually, no, she grabbed one of the boys out the way of the car as well. So yes. Even from that first moment we see her, she's already helping the Pedestrian, and they're already partners, almost. Because again, you see her coming in at the end of, like, when he gets taken down, she comes into the pizza place and is found him and gets Randy to help. Like, okay, let's get him out of here.
Let's back up a little bit, though. Like, the first time we see her, she's already helping. Like, her job is, it's something that I was definitely inspired by bringing my kids to school every morning. I had gone really messy divorce, and the kids were placed in my custody by the city unexpectedly. So I kind of had to scramble and find, like, a place to live. And something that really stuck out was when I would bring them to and from school every day, because they were much smaller. And something that really stuck out was there was a very rough crossing guard, where it was like a four-way intersection, no stop signs, people trying to, like, speed through a school crossing, like, every morning, and she would, like, give them the business. Like, this was a tough broad. She'd be like, "Hey, what are you doing? School crossing. I got the sign up. That means you don't go." And I was really just inspired by that, because we really, not to speak for everyone, but especially people with children, like, there's a whole team of people whose only job is to make sure your kid crosses the street safely and doesn't get hit by a car.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that we don't talk about this way more and give them medals is ridiculous. I thought this would be really cool to have. You've got a guy whose whole thing is walking on the street, so clearly this person's Alfred would be a crossing guard.
Yeah.
Of like, here's some snacks, here's some water. I'm your support staff to make sure we're getting across the street okay.
Yeah.
So everything she's doing is heroic, but is not being observed. It's something out of our peripheries, kind of. We're kind of like, oh, hi, good morning, hello, and then we're off in our day, and we don't think about them again until school's back in session. And how wild is that? That this is your job. You work for like 2 hours of the day before school, after school, and then you're just kind of out in the world. Like you can't go home usually, especially in a big city like this. So you're just kind of creeping around the neighborhood for a while. You're finding your spots. You're getting lunch with everybody. You're done all the lunch spots. You're at the library. You're just cruising around. And we thought that what an intriguing idea to like work in this kind of character here, who has a lot of knowledge, maybe about this world that we wouldn't even think that this would be the person that we can come to.
Yeah. No, absolutely, and it makes perfect sense. It makes perfect sense that, like you kind of said, that she would be his Alfred almost, as someone who basically is walking around the city. It's all about, like, he's got the crosswalk sign on him. He's a pedestrian. It's like, and she's a crossing guard. I'm like, yeah, that makes amazing sense. Ridiculous sense, actually, when you see it like that. And yeah, it's one of those thankless jobs as well. It's one of those people. It's almost a perfect place for her to be as well, because it's one of those jobs that you don't think about. How often do you truly think about like a crossing guard and that person, and they're just always there? And I'm like, that's almost like the perfect place for her to be, like in plain sight, but not noticed almost.
Right.
And I'm like, and very quickly in issue 2, she became probably my favorite character in the book. I love Sophia Bish. She's just a badass. She's just awesome.
Ooh, issue 3. Ooh.
Oh, like, she is amazing, and I'm like, yeah, she's got her head screwed on right. She knows everything that's going on more than anyone else, and yeah. And I'll just say it, the Pedestrian, with what happens at the end of issue 2 and going into issue 3, like, yeah, he'd be done without her. She's one of the real heroes. Absolutely.
Absolutely.
I also love that, a lot of people will reach out and say, oh, we love this, but this is a great comedy. And, I'll joke like, what do you mean comedy? This is a straight drama. And that's kind of how we play it. This is a very straight narrative. There's just ridiculous things in here, which is like, one of my favorite comedies, Ghostbusters, where the world is believable. This is the world. We live in this world. It just has this one weird thing that we have ghosts, and these guys are not the guys who are going to save us. And that's where the comedy is. And maybe they'll pull this off, because we don't have anything else. We got nothing. This is an unprecedented event we're having here. So we kind of have to go with this. I also love that we're also delivering on, it's a deconstruction of the superhero book, but we're still hitting those notes. We're still hitting those things here.
Yeah.
Where there's going to be a moment where you seeing the sound effects of the whoosh, 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 whoosh is going to be on par with hearing John Williams' Superman score. It's going to give you that kind of thrill, because the chips are down and you're just going to hear that swishing sound and you're like, oh no, we are okay now.
Absolutely. And I love that whoosh, whoosh, whoosh sound, by the way, in the book. It's awesome. But I think that's the thing, though, like, you kind of talked about that, like this, it's like, this isn't a comedy, it's a drama in a sense, like, it's played completely seriously, and I'm like, that's what the best superhero stories are, is like the realization of, like, if you actually stop and think about any of them, like, they're all ridiculous.
Yes.
Take something like Batman, the most serious, like, superhero that is out there, and like, when you actually think of the concept of it, it's actually so insane. It's like,
we've just acclimated to it for 85 years,
Exactly. It's like, no, this is insane. This is nuts. This is a guy who literally dresses up as a bat to intimidate and scare people. And it's like, that is an insane idea. Like, if that was like the new book coming out now, people would be like, what the hell is this? I mean, can you imagine the internet ripping that apart? And I'm like,
get ready for Absolute Batman coming in a few weeks.
Absolute Batman with his giant axe on his chest, which is
definitely a reconstruction of that general concept, and I think that's what people are. I haven't had a chance to see it, but I'm hearing great things about it. And from what I'm seeing, it's like, okay, we're stripping away a lot of these trappings, and we're going. These are the basic elements. Let's start over again in a fresh. Probably one of the go-to Batman writers of our lifetime.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a really cool thing to see them like kind of redoing that. It's like I always love when they do that with some of the heroes, especially ones that have been around for that long. Give me a different take on it. Why not?
I think that's the only way these characters have survived for so long, is that they've reinvented themselves over and over again. Sometimes it's, within the continuity. Sometimes it's like its own thing, and they're all valid and they're all exciting. I love superheroes, and I think one of the best things about them, similar to the death stuff we were talking about earlier, is you can do anything as long as it's compelling and interesting, and the character is sound.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think that's it. I think we've all got a love for superheroes. I think if you're kind of in our age range, it's like you got into comics, you got into superheroes. Like, thankfully, there's this vast array of amazing comics out there now of many genres and variety. But I think deep down, most of us have a love for some sort of superheroes.
Sure. And I think that, we've referred to the Pedestrian as a deconstruction of superheroes, but I think it's in the most affectionate way possible. I mean, I hope that comes through. Like, it's a genre that I love, and I have a hard time with books who are like, yeah, the superheroes are bad, actually. And that's not our book for sure.
No.
So hopefully that comes through.
It's so funny because just you saying that, actually, like the whole, like, the superheroes are the bad guys, like, we've gone through periods of that, like, where we've had almost like changes in superhero books where it's been like, we had the straight-laced good guy superheroes who were, untouchable and haha, I'm amazing. And then, like, in the 90s and stuff, we had like the badass like anti-heroes and the Marvel Knights stuff and all that, who were like the edgier sort of kind of hero. And now we've got the, like you said, the heroes are also the bad guys, like, especially like with something like that comes to mind as The Boys. Phenomenal show. It's been doing amazing, but it's like the superheroes, the superpowered ones, are the bad people. And we've seen that start to reoccur.
I also think The Boys has like more to say than just superheroes or fascists or whatever.
Oh yeah,
so,
oh yeah. There's so many messages.
That's why that one worked.
I mean, Boys
that's why that one worked.
It's also a deconstruction of the genres.
Absolutely.
Just it's just these stories from a different warped perspective, for sure.
Yeah, but I think that's what I like about the Pedestrian, is that in a world where people are wanting those edgier takes on superheroes, we're wanting the darker takes on stuff, we're wanting, the boys to see, though, what if superheroes were bad? What if we had, like Injustice with a bad Superman? What if he, took over and became this malevolent overlord? And not that those aren't bad takes or anything. Like, I love The Boys. I love Injustice. I love that comic run as well. It's phenomenal. Mm-hmm. But the Pedestrian is almost like, well, that's what you're doing to deconstruct superheroes and where the superhero world is. But you're going to deconstruct it by having him be the good guy, because that's a possible thing. Right. And it's like, and that's almost like in the face of what everyone else is doing, which is, I kind of love, because it's almost like a callback to not really the golden era, but like the good guy, goody hero of like that. He's coming in specifically to do good deeds. There's no thanks, nothing about it. There's no airs and graces about him. He's just doing his thing. And and it's a really cool thing, because that in itself, and the way the comics are, it stands out. It really does.
It is a very, almost a pulp version of a hero. He's just a guy seemingly in a costume
Mm-hmm.
in a world very much our own, and doing his thing, as a lot of those comics are.
Yeah.
And is he a good guy, or is he just a good guy?
Yeah. That's it. I mean, that's it. And it's like
That's
it's
my
a
new
great
tagline. I
take.
love that.
Is he a good guy, or is he just a good guy? Like that's the tagline for the book right there. But
Mhm.
yeah, I think the Pedestrian's really, it's really phenomenal the way it scripts people, and I think it's deservedly so. I think it's definitely,
Thanks, man.
it's, if you're a fan of superhero stuff, it's different from the stuff that's out there right now. You know,
Or if you're not,
I
it's,
appreciate that.
and I think there's definitely a lot of throwbacks and callbacks to that kind of early hero dynamic, which is a good thing. Nothing like a good bit of nostalgia to catch people's attention. But yeah, I've been a fan of it, and excuse me, I'm intrigued to see where it goes. Just for people that are interested in it, is this going to be a big ongoing series? Do you guys have a set number that you have got for it? Is there a cutoff for it? Is any of that planned out yet, or is this just if it keeps doing well, we're going to keep
I mean,
making it? Or
a little of all of those. So we are
Mhm.
greenlit for 4 issues. So we're definitely doing 4.
Mhm.
Working on 4 right now as we speak. Don't look back there. Anyway, um,
Spoilers.
but if we do what we need to do with this book, the conversation is we could potentially have this become an ongoing. And if we do get to continue, we have lots of ideas
Mhm.
where I think we definitely have features and concepts worked in that kind of touch on a lot of what things we mentioned here. I think we even touch on anti-heroes. This is a very rich world that we're kind of discovering. Maybe this is a much older concept than we're kind of getting the idea of right now. I think we're playing with the idea of where do street signs come from? Did someone chain smoking concoct them at a drafting table at the turn of the century, or could these perhaps be totems that have been lost to human knowledge that are sort of seeping back into the consciousness of being a part of our everyday life that we don't really appreciate or really think about after we're done looking at them. Sort of, we're done interacting with the crossing guard. It's out of our minds now.
Mhm.
We were talking with a going back to talking about DC Comics of the Triangle Era. We were talking Carl Kessel at Baltimore Comic Con, and talking about the book, and he had been hunting for it in Portland. He had gone to 3 shops and couldn't find it, and I was on a panel with him, and we hadn't met, but he had but I held up the book and, oh, Pedestrian. And they pulled me aside afterward and told me he was hunting for the book, and this blew my mind. And then I brought him over to Joey, and then that blew Joey's mind, and we talked about our love of DC Comics of that era and how that kind of seeped into this. And he read all 3 and got back to us and said we're really doing something really cool here that hasn't been done before. We're taking these images from our daily lives that have really been used in such a manner, and so we have this built-in sense of nostalgia for something that's also equally fresh.
Mhm. That
And
is
to
awesome.
your question about the length, I would also say, something that the genesis of this book is a lot of, our Screw You book, where we just kind of did what we thought we did what we wanted to do, made the book we wanted to make in the way that we wanted to make it. And I think, we are greenlit for 4, but I think we're operating in a similar level of where we started, which is like we're just going to make this as though we're going to make this for a long time. So, the end of this first arc is not going to answer every single question because we're creating this with the intention of continuing the story. Part of that is like manifesting that happening, but I think as long as sales are good and response is good, we'll be able to keep going, and that's really exciting. So hopefully, our boldness of just making the weirdest thing we wanted to make will also pay off in this regard.
And to add on to what Joey's saying about the response to this piece has been the strongest of anything we've worked on. This hasn't our previous work has not affected people in such a manner as this has, of like guttural responses. Like we've seen a couple of the interviews that are being posted online, and there's people talking about the book who are just kind of just so overwhelmed with excitement talking about this book that they can barely get the words out to describe it onto a video to tell others about. And that's such a fantastic response to as an artist to get that strong a response to somebody. And the most interesting for me is I have a day job. I have a guy at my job who has been picking up the book each time it comes out, like on the day it comes out, and he'll read it, and then he'll just have questions for me. And we'll, if on like a quiet moment at work, we'll just sit down and we'll have a really long, thoughtful conversation where he asked me like long questions about the book, especially issue 2, because he was like, "No, I got to talk to you now. Like, just everything is stopping. We gotta now, please." So like, what? And he was like, "What the was that?" Like, okay, well, thank you for first of all, and then just kind of even with issue 2, it's like this could have been something that we could have milked until maybe the end of the series. So something about that jarring, oh no, we weren't supposed to see that yet. We weren't quite ready for this now. We're not as humans, we're seeing this information, and this maybe isn't even what this is. This is just how our brains are going to translate this because our minds can't comprehend the true face of our creators.
Mm-hmm. No, I
Well said.
don't blame him for pulling you aside and stuff. I think there's so much in these books, and I think there's so much great stuff that's out there in terms of a great superhero comic, seeing the Cosmos stuff, and like we've talked about, there's so much stuff that people are just connecting with in different ways. I think I can see why there's been such a good response to the book, and I'm so happy for you guys that it's been getting such a positive response. And and
Man.
and like that, some of these other big amazing creators out there are even coming to you and saying, "Hey, I want to get this book. I need to get this. I can't find it." And to even hear that, like, I've gone to 3 comic shops, can't find it. It's sold out everywhere that I'm going.
Even with like our pro friends that like I've known Tom King for years, like before Grayson came out, and at Baltimore, he ran up to us after the Ringos and was like, "Hey guys, Mitch, Mitch Gerard's been raving about this book. Do you have any copies left?"
Wow, Mitch Gerard's been raving about the Pedestrian. I'm like, that would have blown my mind right there. Like, okay.
Yeah, and he came over to the booth too, and was just like, "You guys are doing this is great. This is a great book," and we love his work, obviously. So it's always great to like have that same level of like, oh, we're not on the same level, but we're both doing things the other person enjoys, and there's a mutual respect there, which is always nice when you hit that level with someone you admire.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. That's amazing. I'm glad you guys are getting such positive responses from fans, from pros, from everything. That is absolutely great.
And then I was able to get this glorious Tom King original sketch of the Pedestrian of Baltimore, which we're very excited about.
That is awesome.
I don't think he was as sorry about this one. And I will say,
I think that's his best work.
I love this whole phenomena of Tom King doing his crude sketches, but to Tom's credit, I didn't appreciate this until I saw him do it. He works really hard on those sketches. He's like leaning over, and he's really taking his time with that. He's not just scrawling that and giving and charging for it. He's like really sitting down and going, okay, he's looking at it, and he's like, he's giving it his all on all of those. And I think there's something to commend about.
That makes it even more amazing. Like,
he's not a traditional artist, but someone saying, "I really want you to draw my book," and he tried to stop me 2 times. I asked him after the Ringo, I was like, "Hey, are you still doing sketches at the show?" And he's like, "Yeah." And like, I really need you to do a pedestrian one. It's like, are you sure? I'm like, yeah, no, I would really love that because you're not gonna like it. I'm like, no, I'm gonna love it, I'm sure. Then he did the same thing again the next day, and then yeah, sure enough, I loved it. He's not trying to push his art on you. People are like begging him for it, and he's like, okay,
I love that that's became such a thing now for him, of like just seeing over his social media, like his drawings and his artwork people have asked for on comics. I'm like, I love that that's became such a big thing now. It's amazing.
our friend Chris we were tabling with had no idea this was a thing,
Oh,
and he
really?
saw it. He's like, I don't understand. Like, oh, you don't know this is a thing. That finally DC has recently started actually doing Tom King variants, and that was kind of my dream. Actually, when we were doing, doing the book, I really wanted a Tom King variant for the book
That's what I was going to
released.
say. Now that you've got the picture, like, I need that for like issue 4. I need like, the finale of this initial run. I need a Tom King variant of the
I think
Pedestrian. That needs to
I
become
agree.
a thing.
we do have plans for other event variants that are just as glorious, that we're not going to talk about yet. But we have our very good friend Benjamin Bailey work a couple of options.
Nice.
The ones I've seen are ethereal. They're just beyond a conversation. I believe Joey is he working on that thing we were talking about last night?
He's working on it. Next week probably should
Oh,
have.
get ready for this one. This is going to be a good one. My favorite part of this project is sometimes either me or Joey will get a wild idea and we'll just make a phone call and something this is really stupid happens about this book.
That's
I
great
love
though.
it.
That's like part of. I mean, obviously, I love making the book, but it just it reminds me of being a kid in a lot of ways, and you're just hanging out, and wouldn't it be cool if like we jumped off the roof right now or whatever? Obviously, this is safer, but it's just hanging out with a buddy, getting your other friends involved, seeing how we can like bring an artist that we love or designers that we really like. What can they do for us that they might be into? Just like I love that. I think that's what creating comics and creating art in general should be about. We're building a little community. Rest of the characters are working on building a community, and it's a lot of fun. I hope we can go forever.
And
I think that's
if there's any success that we're benefiting from, it's that we're not trying to please anyone other than ourselves with this project. We're trying to make something that we really enjoy, and if we chase a thought of us chasing something really stupid that only maybe me and Joey would appreciate, we're finding that a wide number of people share our taste. And so we're not chasing the awards, we're not chasing we're chasing, wouldn't it be really stupid if we did this and see if we can get away with this? Because we are.
I think that's the thing that's came across from you guys talking about the Pedestrian is you guys just sound like you're having so much fun with this book. That this is just like you said, like it's you guys are making it for yourselves essentially. This is a book that you want to make. You're
Yeah.
not filling a quota, you're not, work for hire, helping out somebody. This is something that you're both like passionate about and having fun with. And I've actually seen a post today from a creator back to a project that has on Kickstarter, and he was saying that if you're like getting into making comics and you're making your own comic, it's a phenomenal experience, but like make it for yourself because
Yes.
that's
Yeah.
this is such a labor intensive thing. This is such a draining thing. This can be hard sometimes. Make something that you are enjoying, and hopefully other people will
Yeah.
like it as well. And I think that's definitely coming across that you guys absolutely love making this, and you guys are just having a blast writing this issue, and it's coming across, and I'm glad it's connected with so many people.
Thank you.
All right, I think we're probably going to wrap up our chat there, unless there's anything else you guys wanted to talk about or get out there while we're chatting today.
I think we this was like one of the most in-depth discussions about the book itself that we've had, I think, lately.
Yeah.
A lot of our press was like before issue 1 had come out, so it's fun to get to talk a little bit deeper about some of the revelations that have occurred.
Yeah, I love it. I love going in deep into comics, and I would love to, if you guys are willing to ever come back on, I would love to chat with you like after issue 4 comes out and like talk
Sure.
about the full
Yeah.
thing and hopefully
And
beyond. I'm hoping for the Pedestrian to go further and beyond that.
and I should say that issue 4 is still available to pre-order from your local comic book shop. So if you have read issues 1 and 2 so far, we would urge you to please pre-order. As well as the trade paperback was just solicited. That'll be out in
Nice.
January. You can pre-order that as well. We'll collect the first 4 issues.
Awesome. And issue 3, when issue 3 is not out yet, it comes out the 16th of October. Is that right?
Comes out the 16th, the week of New York Comic Con, and Sean and I will both be at that show.
Awesome. So if you're heading to New York Comic Con, make sure you go and check out these guys. Go and say hi to them. Go grab the Pedestrian. Do what I do at cons. Go get some signatures.
We might have some other fun stuff that we're cooking up too.
We are working on a little bit of merch.
Oh, there we go.
That's going to be something that you're definitely going to need. And anyone at New York Comic Con, we're going to be at I-4 all weekend. And to anyone who's within the sound of my voice and has picked up this book already and has shared this to a friend, thank you so much for all of the support. It's been, it's cool. Working comics is great, but a lot of times it's working in a vacuum against, fate. If someone told me before starting comics how much politics there would be to navigate in order to do something that is at its core something that should be fun, I would have said you were crazy. But you're not, and sometimes it could be a lonely, thankless job. And I know I put off a good front, but old von Gorman here does feel things. He does feel the hurt, and he does get bummed out from time to time. But it's people like you who take the time to really invest this much of your lives into something that we thought would be kind of stupid, but maybe good for a laugh. It means the world to us, and thank you all.
Yeah, thank you all so much.
Yeah, absolutely, guys. And if you have not checked out the Pedestrian yet, this is your opportunity. Go and grab issue 1 and 2 are available. Get yourself all caught up before issue 3 drops, and while you go and pick them up, make sure you pre-order issue 4.
If you can't find copies, you can order directly through magmacomics.com. They have every issue, every variant in stock. And if you're not near a local comic shop or you're in a cave somewhere, read them digitally on globalcomics.com.
Nice. And I will put links for Magma Comics, Global Comics, and local comic shop finder all down below, so go and check those out. As well as down below, I will put down these guys' websites and their social media links, so please go and give them a follow online, go and check out their stuff, and go and support them and all the other amazing stuff they're doing besides Pedestrian as well. Greatly appreciate it. But gentlemen, thank you so much for coming on and hanging out with me tonight. This has been so much fun. I've absolutely loved getting to chat with you guys.
We deal in fields, but we run on your praise.
Well, I will give as much of it as I am able to, 100%. But thank you so much, everyone, for coming and checking out this video and checking out the interview. We greatly appreciate it. Make sure. Oh, here we go. I've been waiting for it. He's held off.
I'm gonna play it out.
Thank you, everybody.
There you go. This is what I came into tonight, everyone, by the way. I got serenaded as soon as they came on. This was what I came into tonight. But thank you so much for coming and hanging out with us. Make sure to drop down below and hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any future content here at Comics in the Cross. Hit the like button, give us a little help out as well in this YouTube algorithm. Also as well, you may notice up in the corner over here, we also have a BCW affiliate link. So BCW supplies, when you go and get your Pedestrian comics, you need some bags and boards as well as storage boxes to keep it in. So go and check out BCW supplies for all your comic book needs and use code ComicsCross to save 10% on all your purchases. But you all have an absolutely amazing week, and remember, it's a good week to be a geek. Take care, and we'll see you all soon. Peace.